So thank you for that gracious introduction, Bishop Candia. Thank you for letting me be with you today. It's truly a joy to be able to meet other ELCA folks around the country throughout the ecology of the ELCA. Being in Kansas is especially fun for me because my father was stationed here during the Vietnam War, and my oldest brother was born in Kansas. And so yesterday, when we were at dinner, I texted my mom and I said, "There are a lot more rolling hills here than you led me to believe." And she said, "Honey, you're not in Wichita." So, fair point. But this really is a joy of the work that I do to get to be with different synod assemblies. And I find I make connections wherever I go, sometimes in unexpected ways. So I wanted to share with you some interesting emails I started receiving a few years ago. Emails about my dog Duke, who was due for vaccinations at the Manhattan vet, how well I'm doing with my energy consumption through the Manhattan Co-op, and my matches around Manhattan, Kansas on eHarmony. The only problem with these things is that my two dogs are named Josie and Belle, not Duke. I'm not part of an energy co-op, and I would have a lot of explaining to do with my spouse if I was active on eHarmony. But as it turns out, there is another Sarah Cutter in the world who has accidentally shared my email address a number of times, and she lives in Manhattan, Kansas. I really hope she's a Lutheran and one of you know her, because AT&T is trying to get a hold of her for her new service installation. But now I can at least say I was in Kansas, and that's really kind of fun. So yesterday I flew into Kansas City from my home in Hickory, North Carolina. While I do work for the Churchwide organization, it's located in Chicago. My favorite way to work from Chicago is from the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I'm thinking, okay, I thought y'all were gonna do that, but I can do it, that's just fine. I am a rostered minister of Word and Sacrament, have been since 2008. I've been Churchwide staff for just about 3 years. Last week actually marked my anniversary. Other things that I do in my life, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a fur baby wrangler. The picture that you see is my dog Josie under my desk. That's where she likes to work from home too. Other influences in my life, in my first career, I was an engineer. I also have an MBA. Those two things make me very passionate about administrative ministries. And I like to say to people, and you put a microphone in front of me, so I'm going to say it, if we do not have an articulated vision, we tend to make decisions based on the fewest amount of people we will upset and the smallest amount of money we will spend. And so I am very passionate around vision and what we are called to do. And I really appreciate the theme that you are leaning into at this assembly about listening to the Spirit, where the Spirit is breathing, where the Spirit is calling you to go, and the challenge to then follow that. Also, typically when I'm introduced, I share that I am an Ohio State Buckeyes fan. I know. OH, my friend. I realize that the Ohio State Buckeyes may not build a bridge for us, but wherever I go, I do hope that our mutual distaste for Michigan does. So a word about the Churchwide organization and why it matters. I do work for the Churchwide organization of the ELCA, and I like to say it in that way on purpose. Often our office is shortened to the ELCA, but truly the ELCA is all of us, synods, parishes, Lumen chapters, the Mission Investment Fund, Lutheran Social Service agencies, our colleges and universities are all the ELCA. I work for the Churchwide organization, We have a particular role to play in the wider ELCA ecology. We do things on a national level that cannot be done by synods alone or by parishes alone. I work in the part of the organization called Christian Community and Leadership. It's really creatively named. We work with everything on a national level dealing with, guess what? Christian communities and leadership. There you go. That's what I do. I'm the Senior Director of Operations there, so I equip people to do their work. And we work with everything involving community development, leadership development. So new mission starts, our directors for evangelical mission, our deployed staff in each synod. So here you have Amy and Donna that do that. We all work together. We also shepherd campus ministries, our network of ELCA colleges and universities, the candidacy process that's been mentioned a number of times, youth ministries, young adult ministries, children's ministries, young adults in global mission, Fund for Leaders are all things that I get to work with. Other primary ministry area at the Churchwide organization is called Service and Justice. I feel like in Service and Justice are the ministries that we all really are aware of. So World Hunger is there. The companion synod partners, yours are Papua New Guinea, and a synod in Russia, missionaries, advocacy, and anything else that touches folks outside of the ELCA sit in Service and Justice. In our churchwide system, I do what I can to get rid of red tape and pave a way for our staff to work more efficiently. I also have this not-so-private agenda that I want us all to be proud of the ELCA. I know as Lutherans it's kind of in our DNA to be humble, but we are a both-and people, right? So I feel that we can be both humble and proud of who we are and what we do, and I hope that what I share helps add to that. Like the words of the old hymn, I love to tell the story. It is a joy to be with you, to share what we did in fiscal year 2023, and to make connections about how good it is to be church together. So I love to tell the story to those who know it best, seem hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. And with that, one of the ways that we show love and live out our faith is by mission support. One way we help our neighbors and turn faith into action is by making financial contributions and offering. Typically, we make those to our congregations. Each year, ELCA congregations share a portion of their offerings and tithes and other incomes to support ELCA ministries in their synods. And then synods share a portion of those gifts with the national church. Here in Central States, you have a commitment of 50% of real mission support to be moved on to the national church. So that mission support literally supports the mission that we have discerned as the wider church. And together, we support ministries, including ministry leaders, that no single congregation could do on its own. So thank you for being part of that together. Your generosity to the Churchwide organization was $643,000 in 2023. On behalf of the church, thank you. This is generous, and we are truly grateful. Overall, the national church received $37 million, so you can see what your part of that was. So we share ministries together through the organization, some things I've already mentioned, new starts, missionaries, companion relationships, support for rostered ministers. We have general counsel, ecumenical relationships, social statements, worship resources, racial justice, advocacy. We have database management. I heard that mentioned earlier. We also keep our governance. We manage workshops, other trainings, and gatherings. So thank you for your financial support in making these things happen. With that, I'd like to share a message with you from Presiding Bishop Elizabeth Eaton. Have you heard the phrase, "May you live in interesting times"? Many would say that we live in uncertain times. We're on that bridge. With a world experiencing war and famine, the stress and lingering effects of the pandemic, but Bishop Eaton reminds us that as people of the resurrection, we also live in hope. God's love sustains us even in the midst of difficult times. We live in interesting times because God's love is always real.
There is a saying, may you live in interesting times. At first glance, this sounds like an ironic curse. Interesting? What? A pandemic? War in Gaza and Ukraine? Famines in Sudan and Ethiopia? Stress in our families, our communities, and even in our congregations? Who needs interesting? Give us boring. Give us garden variety. Give us the same old, same old. But what if may you live in interesting times is not a curse, but a call? Yes, we live with danger and uncertainty, but as people of the resurrection, we also live in hope and have felt God's love, which sustains us even in the most difficult times. God's love, most clearly expressed in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, is always real. Some of life's hard realities may make it difficult to perceive. Maybe we are trying too hard. Maybe we think that only monumental occasions and dramatic feelings are manifestations of God's love. People come to our congregations because they want to share and feel God's love in community. They want to know that they are not alone, that they are forgiven, that God's love gives us the grace and space to try and fail, to sin boldly, as Martin Luther says. And we, as broken as we are, as dulled as we might have become to the reality of God's love, have not been cursed with interesting times, but are called to serve as ambassadors of God's love. We see God's love in the sacraments, where God claims each of us with God's love and nourishes and strengthens us with Jesus' own body and blood. We see God's love when we pray because we can enter into the sacred space of God's love in joy, in sorrow, in hope, in times of desperation, because God's love is real and God receives our prayers even when we feel we can't pray. We see God's love in forgiveness when hearts and lives are mended and hurt and alienation are taken away. We see God's love in acts of service when we, liberated by God's grace, reach out to our neighbor. And we experience the life-changing love of God in Scripture, in worship, in music, dance, and art. Yes, we live in interesting times, but these interesting times are made meaningful and filled with possibility and hope because God's love is real. Go in peace and share God's love with one another and all creation. Thanks be to God.
Our church benefits from the gifts of time and talent offered by faithful volunteers throughout the ELCA who serve on committees and engage in special efforts with and for the Churchwide organization. So we offer special thanks for the people from Central States who work with us on our shared behalf. First, I would like to thank Susan Boxberger, who serves as a member of the Churchwide organization's Church Council. So similar to congregation councils and your synod council, the Churchwide organization has a council that serves as a board of directors and is the legislative authority for the organization. This group meets twice a year for several days at a time. They faithfully review and approve spending, budgets, and social messages and constitutional changes that allow the ELCA to move and grow in response to where the Spirit is calling us and to the needs of our communities. The time and effort to serve a 6-year term is extraordinary, and Susan is a remarkable council member. So I hope you are proud to have her representing your synod in this powerful way. Second, I would like to thank Ruth Ellen Howard, who is serving on the Commission for a Renewed Lutheran Church. For a little bit more about the commission and their work, I'll share with you where they came from or how they got started. There we go. The commission for a renewed Lutheran Church was formed in response to memorials entitled Restructure the Governance of the ELCA that was passed at the 2022 Churchwide Assembly. The commission's mandate is to reconsider the statements of purpose for each expression of the church, the principles of its organizational structure, and all matters pertaining thereunto, being particularly attentive to our shared commitment to dismantle racism. 35 diverse members from across the church were appointed to the commission in 2023. If you want to stay up to date on their work, go to elca.org/CRLC, where they are posting all of their minutes quite openly. The commission has met 5 times, both virtually and in person, and have divided their work from their initial mandate among 7 internal committees. The commission members have engaged in over 60 listening sessions across the church, offered an online survey, and are currently preparing recommendations for a faithful path forward that equips and empowers all expressions of the ELCA for relevant and faithful ministry in a contemporary context. A report and recommendations will be presented at the 2025 Churchwide Assembly with a potential recommendation of a special assembly of the ELCA. If you want to stay connected to their work, check out the ELCA website through the link I already mentioned, and you can find the commission on all of the socials, Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. A few other people in your synod that I would like to recognize. You have several other folks serving on national committees. Would like to thank Kevin Boatwright for serving on our Committee of Discipline. Thanks also to Krista Harris and Todd Malloy, who serve on the Portico Board of Pensions, and to Lisa Peck, who serves on the board of 1517 Media, the publishing house of the ELCA. While I was getting prepared for this presentation, a couple of things bubbled up as concerns that I was asked to address. Some of them have already been addressed, but I will at least give a little bit of my view from a national standpoint. So this was sort of, hey, do y'all know how bad we're suffering down here? And a concern being felt around the ELCA is a shortage of clergy. Bishop Candia spoke to that already, and truly this is a multifaceted issue with a number of variables. So at the national level, we launched the Candidacy Leadership Development Working Group in March of 22 in order to create a more equitable and flexible candidacy process. Both Bishop Candia and I serve on that team. And I've put a note on the screen that documents all the entities that are involved to get a new process approved. I know it's not very exciting, but at least gives you an idea of the complexity to create a new process. And it's a long one. We started by listening to the church, listening to our marginalized communities especially, and then synthesizing that feedback. We have gone through a first draft of a new process and recommended the needed constitutional changes to the Church Council. We are currently working on our next draft and collaborating with a number of stakeholders across the ELCA. Candidacy is literally something that touches every corner of our church, so getting everyone on the same page is a little difficult. Because the church can't wait for the process to be shifted, and it's going to take a while once it is shifted to start moving candidates through, many of our synods are leaning on lay leadership, often in the form of synodically authorized ministers. These are leaders that have been identified by local congregations and serve where no rostered leader is available. Anecdotally, I will let you know, Northwest Minnesota Synod commissioned more than 40 synodically authorized ministers at their synod assembly just a couple weeks ago. So it's not just here. Here's the problem of having an impact on this at a national level. These folks, the Sam-I-Ams, which I'm also going to steal that phrase, the first word in that phrase is synodically. So what can I do at a national level if it's synodically authorized? So you hear the problem there? We have 65 synods. There's an issue with a clergy shortage, but the way to help is with a synodical authorization. So we are taking a look at synod guidelines for SAMs across the ecology of the ELCA. We've just started that work at the Churchwide organization. We're doing that to see if we can find patterns, if we can recommend competencies, if we can add some transferability from synod to synod. It's going to take a little bit of time, and we just got started, but we are not ignorant to the problem nor the solutions that are organically popping up, and we are doing what we can to add influence in a way that might streamline and make life a little bit better for all of us. Finally, this spring, I want to let you know that we launched an experiment in partnership with our seminaries to try out discernment groups. The goal of this experiment is to expose more ELCA members to the idea of rostered ministry and to help them discern together in cohorts or in groups what next steps might be and where the Spirit might be calling them to go. More about that will be coming, I think, via email later this summer to rostered ministers, so please keep an eye out for it. And then we've got some short-term staff that'll be called discernment advocates, so if you hear someone that says, I'm calling on behalf of the ELCA and I'm a discernment advocate, please be their friend. But let me tell you, everything we're doing at Churchwide is like the tip of the iceberg, right? Because at the end of the day, we are a very independent denomination, and congregations are afforded a lot of autonomy. And at times that can be a blessing, and at other times that can be felt like a curse. The Churchwide organization and synods, we can work our networks, we can make recommendations, we can try to influence, but we don't know the people in the congregations as well as you do. Those of us who are here, like y'all, I'm from North Carolina. Sometimes y'all just slips out. But I'm convinced you're here because you love the church. Right? Like you're giving up your free time, or some of you took off work because you love the church. And it's really fun to be here because I get to count the yes votes. And a lot of times in church, we're really concerned about the no votes, but you all are the yes votes. And you love the church. And you might know somebody in your congregation or somebody else's congregation that you see gifts for ministry. And a lot of times, rostered leaders are rostered leaders because somebody else said, hey, I think you can do this. And so this is my invitation to you. You probably have more influence on the system than I do. So if you see somebody, or you know somebody that might have gifts for ministry, whether that's rostered or volunteer, maybe they need a little bit of encouragement, and God's calling you to do that. And that's your part in the church. So I would just leave that as an encouragement and an invitation as we're trying to be beautiful, brave, and kind today. With that, I want to add my thanks and celebration of the 50th anniversary of ELCA World Hunger. For 50 years, we have joined with other Lutherans to address the root causes of hunger and poverty around the world. As we reflect on our last 50 years of ministry together, we know God calls us to respond to the needs of the world now more than ever. You can learn more at elca.org/WH50. You all are a very generous synod when it comes to world hunger. Here in Central States, nearly $430,000 was raised for ELCA World Hunger. Thank you for this significant contribution, which combined with other synod and direct gifts totaled more than $20 million in 2023 for this important cause. Also, on behalf of the ELCA World Hunger team, I was sent here to say thank you for making ELCA World Hunger the beneficiary of your offerings for your assembly. I also would like to thank Kendra Nolde, your Synod's World Hunger chairperson. When I share information about ELCA World Hunger, I always like to remind everybody that the United States is actually a part of the world, right? We often forget that. And I know you got to see a beautiful presentation about some of the hunger ministries that are here in your synod already, but I would like to recognize those that have received grants, domestic hunger grants from, my bad. You don't see this yet. Ignore it. There we go. In 2023, 4 Central States ministries received ELCA World Hunger domestic grants. Sure, I can spit all that out of my mouth. So there they are, RSVP of Northeast Kansas, the Gathering Table, ICT Food Rescue, and Unity Lutheran Church have all been beneficiaries of World Hunger grants. Now we'll talk about Lutheran disaster response. Sticking with generous support, thank you for your support of Lutheran disaster response ministries. Gifts to LDR typically follow disasters, if that makes some sense. Our fundraising for Lutheran disaster response is often follows what the need is. In 2022, we had a record year of giving, which directly correlated with the war in Ukraine. The outpouring is truly inspiring, and your generosity helps us to share God's love here at home and throughout the world. A little bit more about that, if this ministry is new to you, I'll let you know that Lutheran Disaster Response is the humanitarian response ministry of the ELCA. We respond to disasters and crisis situations across our footprint as well as around the world, providing help and hope to those impacted by a wide variety of disasters. Lutheran Disaster Response is part of the other part of Churchwide where I don't work. It sits in an area called Building Resilient Communities with ELCA World Hunger and Amparo. That's in our service and justice area. In 2023, we served in 51 different countries through companion churches, Lutheran World Federation, and other ecumenical partners that are in action by churches together, sometimes called the ACT Alliance. In all places, LDR provides funding or capacity building in response to requests from local partners, and always in coordination with regional area desks. Our goal is to enhance the community's capacity. So we're growing the capacity to respond and recover from a disaster or crisis, not to impose our ideas or what we think that they need. So domestically, LDR works in collaboration with our synods and social ministries, tribal nations, and community-based organizations. Because every community and every disaster is unique, the relationships vary, but we're grounded in the principle of accompaniment. So LDR is here to walk with communities before, during, and after a crisis. We don't just show up and take over. Instead, we are present through the invitation of those on the ground and walk with them through their unique situation. So your support in 2023 provided lots and lots of stuff, including food and housing, construction materials, clean water, food and shelter, housing, food, and livelihood support, care for caregivers, housing, food, language classes, and psychological support. Thank you for your gifts from Central States Synod. They totaled more than $344,000 last year. All told, we had more than $13 million collected and distributed through Lutheran Disaster Response in 2023. Other ways that we are church together, turning from disaster response to new growth. In 2023, Central State Synod Ministries received grants that impacted congregational life. There are 4 of them. So thank you for your support to the National Church that did come back here at home in terms of helping new Christian worshiping communities come together. Thank you for showing up in your communities. On behalf of this church, we were thrilled to celebrate 10 years of God's work, our hands, in 2023. We are called as Lutherans to share God's grace and love. Participating in acts of service in our communities is one way that we live that out. We look forward to the next 10 years of God's work, our hands. For this year, you can mark your calendars for Sunday, September 8th. As the next God's Work, Our Hands Sunday. I saw somebody at a table out in the lobby getting t-shirts ready for the youth gathering in New Orleans. So don't forget, we've got the ELCA's largest gathering happening this summer in July in New Orleans, because who doesn't want to go to New Orleans in July? This city has welcomed so many ELCA events over the years, and we really are thrilled to go back and welcome thousands of young people who will experience Created to Be. So if you're going and you see me, say hi. And I want to let you know about a study that we learned about recently from a fellow named Jake Sorensen. He's from Wisconsin, and he is part of a ministry called Sacred Playgrounds. If you Google it, you can find it. It's Sacred Playgrounds. He recently shared in a study that he did that for the ELCA, not just the wider church, but for the ELCA, the 4 most influential events that lead people to move into rostered ministries. So the 4 most impactful events in the ELCA are Sunday school, campus ministry, camp experiences, and the youth gathering. Okay? So isn't that interesting? Sunday school, camp experiences, campus ministry, and the youth gathering. And what they also learned in that study is that when one of those areas is healthy, it impacts the health of the other area in a positive way. Does that make some sense? So it's kind of like a rising tide raises all ships. Okay? So in those 4 areas, when one is healthy and one is very active, it tends to have a positive influence on the other. So like if you have a good experience in Sunday school, you're probably going to join a campus ministry. If you really like camp, you might want to engage in that in the next step of your life as you transition. So we're aware of that at the church-wide level. I work with the folks that are planning the gathering, and we're a little concerned that we missed a gathering cycle. And we're a little concerned at the trends we're seeing in those other 3 areas, and are wondering what missing the cycle of the gathering had on those, and we're very aware. We are going to have an amazing gathering in New Orleans, and I'm so excited. We had to change venues for a number of reasons I can't get into, but moving to the venue we're in now means it's going to be full, and that's really exciting, and it's going to be a really good time. But it is a smaller gathering than it has been in years past, and we're not ignoring that. And I'm standing here being honest with a hard truth, but we're not ignoring that. So what we're doing at the church-wide level is using this opportunity to see what we can do to add some smaller impact events between July 2024 and July of 2027, when we plan to have the next gathering, so that we can continue to infuse energy into our youth. So I hope that's a good thing, and I hope you can be supportive of that. And again, if you see me, say hi. Just remind me that you're from Central States so I don't look like an idiot. If you want to get your phone out and you're curious about some things going on, I would encourage you to do so. If you see me later, I can help you. So I don't know if any of y'all are concerned about the election cycle coming up. I don't know. I mean, there's diversity in my congregation. Maybe there's diversity in yours, at least of opinions, right? So if anyone is concerned about the election cycle coming up and if it's going to cause any tension, there's a resource available for you that our advocacy office has put together. And you can get to it from this QR code. It's a resource for civic engagement this election cycle. It's intended for like adult forums, Sunday school classes, or small groups or Bible studies to engage in faithful conversation. What does it mean if you have a different political view as the person next to you in the pew, and how do you have dialogue about that without killing each other? That's my interpretation. Don't put that on ELCA advocacy. So hopefully that's of help. Another resource I'd like to share to you is from our coaching ministry. ELCA coaching is a ministry that's literally blooming across the church. And so there's a couple of opportunities that you might be interested in. The first is coaching for everyday life, which is intended to be like a coaching light, just a very small introduction to help participants learn how to have some helpful curiosity and some solid listening skills. It's intended for anyone. This is not clergy limited, or you have to have a special skill set. If you want to have maybe coaching posture in your work professionally, or whatever a vocation may not be paid for, if that's volunteer, we love that too. But if you're interested and curious about a little bit of coaching skills, coaching for everyday life might be helpful for you. The other opportunity I'm sharing is called Supportive Spaces. This is a cohort-based program intended to help us have skills to navigate a potentially divisive conversations in our churches and communities. So far, so good. It's getting a lot of good traction, enough so that I thought it was worth mentioning here. As I wrap things up, I just want to say that your Synod staff rocks. I've enjoyed my time here. They're wonderful, wonderful people. I get to work with 2 of them on a regular basis. But Synod staffs have a tough job. They're often called upon in times of crisis, conflicts, and transition. The work is rarely the same from one day to the next, and they're expected to be experts in everything: finance, stewardship, interpersonal relationships, governance, conflict, leadership, vitality, worship, and then on top of that, they're also supposed to be excellent preachers. So would you please join me in thanking your Synod staff for the work that they do. With a special shout out to Rich, who started this week, and I think that's crazy. Similarly, your bishop rocks too. Bishop Susan. She is a joy to work with, and she has mentioned a number of times the ways that we have gotten to know each other, and it's really nice when you enjoy your work. And it is so enjoyable to work with you and to join you in so many different ways. You may not know that on the national level, she chairs our leadership committee for the Conference of Bishops. She serves as chair on the candidacy leadership team that I'm on too. She's a board member for Bethany College. She serves with the Quality of Call initiative and probably a variety of other ways that I am not aware. So thank you. Thank you for being beautiful, brave, and kind, and leading during a time when change is so rapid and so difficult. We truly are church together, and I appreciate you letting me take some of your time at this assembly. It is such a privilege. Thank you for your generosity, your partnership, and your time. Really can't say it enough. Thank you.